know y'all know nothing about that. Rick James, Tina Marie about to go crazy. But anyway, where are we at again? Where are we? Predictably, what is happening right now in Indiana Feverland is exactly what I told you all would happen prior to the season. Go back, watch my videos where I talked about the Indiana Fever this year and what would happen. Excuse me, but those croissants from Starbucks, them joints is crazy. Ain't got nothing to them. Just warm them up a little bit. Crazy. But what did I tell you was going to happen? I told you there would be a rift between coach and marquee player. Between coach and marquee player. Coach Stephanie White. Is there an issue between her and Aaliyah Boston? Not that I know of. Is there an issue between her and Kelsey Mitchell? Not that I know of. Actually, didn't this team go through a little period of about 5 games where their starting franchise player was missing? And in that time, did they not defeat the likes of the Minnesota Lynx? Did they not defeat the likes of the Las Vegas Aces for the first time ever since the new marquee player has been there? Did they not do these things? Did they not still happen to hover around the same 500 that they've typically hovered around with the marquee player? When that happened, if you recall, I told y'all that the rift between Stephanie White and Caitlin Clark, which is clearly a rift now, at least according to most of the content creators who represent that fan base that I've heard, that there's clearly something there. Okay? What I told y'all was Stephanie White demonstrated her ability to coach by taking a Caitlin Clark-less team that y'all told me desperately needs her. They can't win without her. They're practically nothing without her. Stephanie White took a team without Caitlin Clark and beat the Minnesota Lynx, a 17-2 team, convincingly for a Commissioner's Cup. That same Stephanie White took a Caitlin Clark-less team and beat the Las Vegas Aces, a team that Caitlin Clark has never beat. When that happened, I told y'all that Stephanie White had demonstrated her worth and her ability to coach. And that when it comes to her and Caitlin Clark, this should not be a back and forth. Caitlin Clark should be saying, yes, ma'am. Following orders. Letting the coach do their job and you as a player do your job. But what happens when she comes back? Stephanie White, you see, is understanding the type of team that is going to take to win in the WNBA. Now, one can argue, well, she hasn't won a championship in the WNBA. That's fair. But I think it's also fair to admit that Caitlin Clark has not either. Right? We could add that Caitlin Clark hasn't won at the college level as well in 4 years, though getting close a number of times, and she gets the credit for getting close. We could add that she hasn't won at the high school level either. The point I'm making is there is no one who can point to Caitlin Clark and say, well, we should listen to her on how to win it all. It would actually make more sense to listen to Aaliyah Boston, what she has to say. Or Natasha Howard, who has won multiple championships. Or when she was there, Dewana Bonner, who has won multiple championships. Just speaking logically here on how those things tend to work, right? Okay, so there should not be no rift between those two for anyone that is reasonable. All right. Now, make no mistake, Caitlin Clark does play a style of basketball that I myself, since last year, have been telling you guys I feel like isn't akin to winning championships. The ball control nature of it, the poor shot selection nature of it, the turnover nature of it, along with the no defense nature of the way she plays. I believe she's helps you a lot in some ways, but then ultimately is a liability at the end of the day when we're talking about getting to the next level, playing against those teams that start to strategize and plan against you. And then the nature of her lack of versatility, right? And what do I mean by that? Because some of you I've heard, I believe that she is a versatile player because why? Because she can get you good double-digit points, she can get you double-digit assists, and she can get you some rebounds. So that has you thinking that she's a versatile player, but that's not what versatility is, sir. No. That's more like multiple things you can do on the court. Versatility is, say, for example, you can play on the ball, which we know Caitlin Clark can do pretty well, as well as play off the ball, which Caitlin Clark either is unable or unwilling to do well. Okay? I've watched some of the game. I finally had a chance to watch some of the game, and I don't know. Just reading body language and things like that. Caitlin Clark was out there. But I think listening to Stephanie White, she's probably seeing some of what I'm kind of seeing. What I'm seeing is a player who, because they're not getting their way, they're not willing to buy in. And because they're not buying in, they're not giving all of their effort completely out there. And this is what you have. Now, this contrasts with some of her fans who are pushing a narrative that's similar to this. Their narrative is this. Caitlin Clark last year, okay, now I'm not saying I agree with this. I believe this is, not the case, but they believe that Caitlin Clark came and energized and rejuvenated a losing franchise or a losing team by playing the style that she plays, which entails her having the basketball and making pretty much all of the offensive decisions and all of the playmaking and all of the passes that lead to scores, right? And that they play this fast up-tempo offense where they're running, and that this fast up-tempo offense has had the WNBA scared of the fever. And that Stephanie White has come in and has hijacked the whole situation and stopped the momentum of this fever offense that was going to shock the world and shock the WNBA and ultimately win all types of championships. I think this is what the typical, it may be a little oversimplification on my part, but it's a roundabout summary of what I believe the typical Caitlin Clark fan believes is happening. Okay? Now, let me explain what I think is happening. I think Stephanie White does see what y'all kind of see, right? The great transition play of Caitlin Clark and how she plays well running with the ball and the passing and all that, right? But I think she probably thinks similar to me that isn't going to ultimately win championships because she could foresee what happened. And you got to keep in mind, and this is very interesting, that she had a lot to do with stopping that team last year and sweeping them in the playoffs, right? Because she was the coach of the Alyssa Thomas-led Connecticut Sun team that ultimately, stopped the Fever, right? So I think Stephanie White knows how to stop that offense you guys want, the Fever fans want, and she knows its limitations. Okay. So as a coach, she could go two ways. She could just go along with it, give Caitlin Clark what she wants, despite maybe that the other players may not want to play that way, but just give Caitlin Clark what she wants, run with it, and then ultimately lose in the playoffs, because she knows that it's going to lose when you run into, a real team that decides to play defense and all of that. And that could be, you can lose to Seattle, you can lose to freaking the Mercury, you can lose to a number of teams. You can lose to even the Aces, honestly. You can lose to the New York, definitely. You can lose to Minnesota, okay? Stephanie White knows that because she knows what's going to happen later. So this is just what I think. She knows what's going to happen later. So she's trying to prepare the team to be the best version of themselves. And part of that entails Caitlin Clark playing some off the ball. Because she knows it's way too easy to strategize against just a Caitlin Clark dominated team like that, offense. This is what I think she believes. So she's trying to do those things that she knows will ultimately help in the long run. But the typical Fever fan, who, in my opinion, don't know basketball like that, but let's say they do, I don't think they see what Stephanie White sees, and definitely don't see what I see. And I think Stephanie White sees the situation similar to the way I do, and to the way many people who agree with me do. Now, what's predictably happening is the fans are obviously choosing Caitlin Clark. It comes down to Caitlin Clark and the coach. They're going to choose Caitlin Clark because they believe Caitlin Clark is the greatest thing since sliced bread. They believe what she brings is just a type of play that has never been done before, never been seen before, and is unstoppable, and they'll take the league by storm, and that this is a conspiracy to stop it. So that's what I'm seeing all over the place. This woman needs to go ASAP, talking about Stephanie White. Stephanie White is a horrible coach. Stephanie White is an agent. Stephanie White this, Stephanie White that, Stephanie White this, Stephanie White that. And ultimately, I think it's sad. It's like, when Allen Iverson was with the 60, came with the Sixers, and I remember this, I saw this vividly. I'm in Philadelphia. And Larry Brown initially came. Okay? And at the time, we had Allen Iverson, Jerry Stackhouse, we had Tim Thomas, we had Keith Van Horn. Well, Keith Van Horn came a little later, but Tim Thomas may have had Tony Kukoc. I don't remember if we had him or not. Okay, Derek Coleman. We had a number of talented players that if they could get it together, could actually do something. Led by Allen Iverson, though, who was obviously the most talented player and the player that you had to get to buy in. And there was a lot of head bumping and stuff like that, man. Allen Iverson wanted to play his particular way, which inhibited him to be able to play with certain other types of players and so on. Right? But one thing Allen Iverson did learn how to do, that I would hope Caitlin Clark will learn how to do, is play off the ball. You'll notice later on what the earliest thing that Larry Brown identified is that, okay, Allen Iverson is a special scorer, right? And we can say that about Caitlin Clark. She's a special scorer. I don't have a problem with that, right? But what he identified early on was that Allen Iverson really is not a point guard, right? At Georgetown, they had him playing point guard primarily because of his size and how dynamic he was, right? And the fact he can pass. But she identified point guard play is really here more than those things, right? So he identified that, and he put him off ball, and he put a similar player, Eric Snow, who I would say very similar to this Ari McDonald, really very defensive, very smart. Doesn't take a lot of the dumb chances and stuff like that, but not the greatest shooter, but can shoot it. Very similar type of player. Even though she kind of reminds me of Chauncey Billups more like, and she wants to take Caitlin off the ball. Now, you don't necessarily want to put her at the 2 because of, Kelsey Mitchell was just perfect at the 2, so maybe you try the 3. She's trying different things. And maybe she'll find out that a lineup with Ari McDonald won't work, because you need certain things from the 3. And a girl like, a player like Kelsey, Lexi is more like a traditional 3 than Caitlin. It may not work. It's funny because you see the same thing happening in Dallas, where because DJ Carrington is hurt and because Arike is hurt, Paige Beckers, who was playing the point guard pretty much all year, they were able to just give the point guard duties to J.J. Quinterly, put in Isaiah James, and then move Paige to the 3. And you notice when Paige is in there, this is what I tell you all the difference between these two players. You see Paige would just be running around, fighting through screens and everything, waiting to get open, to catch and shoot. And even though she didn't have the greatest game yesterday, simply because she was missing, you know that she can do both, right? She can play on the ball and off the ball. There's a willingness and also an ability thing. And with Caitlin Clark, I don't know, it seems to be clear she wants to play one particular way, and if she don't get her way, she's either going to be half-hearted about it or she really can't do it, one or the other. And as predictable as I knew it would be, all the fans, y'all going to go along with the player, and so on, and she's going to earn the reputation of a coach killer eventually if you don't find the right coach and they don't get it done. Right? So what it looks like, the best thing for Caitlin Clark in the situation for the Fever, they're probably going to have to find, a coach that has no heart that she can just run all over. Who would be a good coach probably for y'all? Tyler Marsh. I think Tyler Marsh, the guy that's in Chicago, would probably be a good coach for the Fever. Because he's, a little guy, man, who's just, doesn't yell a lot. He's not going to demand much, And Caitlin Clark could do whatever she wants, have the ball, just pass the ball to everybody, have all these vets mad because this player keeps turning the ball over, and the only time they get the balls is if she's passing it to that person to get an assist for herself. Like I know what she's doing, but because Caitlin Clark don't like those passes that lead to someone else getting an assist. She likes passes that lead to her getting assists. These are just what it is. This is who she is right now. They call someone else's stat pattern. Unbelievable. But anyway, that's what I got on that. Predictable. Stephanie White, it probably won't work out. Stephanie White will probably end up at some point just relenting, giving in, and doing what Christy Size did. Allow Caitlin Clark to have her little fun. Get to the playoffs, get swept out again, and who knows what happens after that. But if this keeps happening, you know what that means. She's going to get the reputation of a coach killer, whether y'all like it or not. Peace out.